Hello and welcome to North 100, a Canadian Highlander podcast. I'm Serge. Joining me today, we have the wonderful Wheeler.
Ahoy.
A reminder that North 100 is brought to you by you, your support over at the Patreon at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Welcome to part 2 of our Kamigawa Neon Dynasty set review. Today we're going to be covering black, red, and artifact cards. And very quickly, I want to say a huge thank you for all the tremendous and positive feedback we got in specifically the YouTube's comment section. I'm going to be honest, I don't know if there are comments on the other ways we get this, but didn't realize how long it had been between episodes, and a lot of people had a very nice, warm welcome back. Also, we had asked you for feedback on which cards you think we had missed talking about, and there's one in particular that a lot of people brought up, which is Moon Circuit Hacker. So I'm going to cover that very quickly, and then we're going to go straight to the set review and let Wheeler kick us off with our first black card. Now, if you don't know Moon Circuit Hacker, this is a 2-mana 2/1 enchantment creature human ninja for 1 and a blue. It has ninjutsu for a single blue, and it reads, whenever Moon Circuit Hacker deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card unless Moon Circuit Hacker entered the battlefield this turn. Now, I know this card has been making some waves in Pauper and taking stuff off. I'm actually not particularly high on this card, and my evaluation of ninjutsu is such that in our format, in Canadian Highlander, every card is very, very powerful. It's the best cards in the history of Magic, and as such, everything you play has to be very, very impactful. And I don't think this card is good enough to make the cut. And I hear what you're saying. You're saying, but Serge, think about an ETB deck. What if you bring back your value creatures? In my opinion, I think there are cheaper and better ways to do that. And for ninjas to really make a splash, I think they need to be either very, very high impact or they need to be in a pretty niche shell. But maybe Wheeler has a different opinion, and that'll segue very nicely to the first card we're talking about today, which is also a ninja. Wheeler.
Yeah, this is Biting Palm Ninja. It's the first black card we've got here. 2 and a black for a 3/3 human ninja, with ninjutsu for 2 and a black. And it enters the battlefield with a menace counter on it. And whenever Biting Palm Ninja deals combat damage to a player, you can remove a menace counter from it. And when you do, a player reveals their hand, you pick a non-land card, and you exile that card. I think these, if they do have a home, I mean, I do believe Biting Palm does. This card is just gas all the way up and all the way down. Having played quite a bit of ninjas since the set has come out, they're very good. Even if you're not necessarily returning a value creature, but the ones that are heavy hitters, like the Fallen Shinobi, or a secret one we'll get to later, are pretty good. And this is kind of in that camp where getting smacked for 3 and then exiling their best card, exile being huge here, is great. And then you could also just say, no, I'm good. You don't really have, I don't care what you have. I want to just have a menace creature and just continue the beatdown. Maybe you'll do it next turn. Maybe, it's nice to have that option, or remove it and then reset it. So I think Biting Palm is going to show up in more places than, say, Moon Circuit Hacker. But one overlap between the two that I think people tend to not really focus on, because, I mean, the word ninja is there, is human. I could see both these cards finding a home in the Esper Humans deck that has some amount of ETBs that, you could rebuy. But honestly, just punching for more damage and getting a Champion of the Parish trigger or a Thalia's Lieutenant trigger is kind of spicy enough. And then it replaces itself,
I actually am very curious about this. What are your thoughts on ninjas in Highlander? Because with the exception of, I mean, you mentioned it before, the big old Shinobi, Fallen Shinobi, is just such an absolute house. And that got onto my radar because I think Jer brought it up as the best card you're not playing. But other than that, I feel they're still quite clunky. Do you think this set is making them more viable as an archetype, or are they still, is it the sliver issue where on paper they seem really cool, but realistically every mid-range card is just going to outvalue them?
I think you actually showcase the biggest issue, is that they are treated too much as like a monolith. Like, you have to, if you play one, you have to play them all. Or that they have to be in a certain deck in a certain situation.
Yeah.
I've been the Fallen Shinobi and the big green one we'll get to. I spent the last 2 Highlander events just returning Llanowar elves, returning Kasali Pride mages, and killing people, Baleful Strixes. The varying levels of good, But like, I'm not playing a ninja deck. I'm just playing these creatures that if my opponent doesn't block a creature that they have no business blocking, they're going to get smacked for a bajillion. And I'm going to get a massive value swing.
They don't play around combat spells, and they certainly don't play around ninjas. So,
and like a gilded goose gets them in play. And so,
well, I mean, okay, I'm going to be honest with you, Wheeler. If you attack me with your gilded goose, I'm probably going to be like, this guy's up to something.
That's the thing, is that I think people focus too much on ninjas doing ninja things and being tricky when you just treat it like a questing beast, where it's like, I'm just going to play this idiot. And if you have it, sure, you have it. But I don't think you do. And if I think you really do, then I can just play around it like at a different time, right? I have options in how I play this.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's just like, I'm just going to smack you with a giant truck, like a sledgehammer, and get something immediately out of it. And then also, have the flexibility of rebuying an effect, but getting a blocker, something back on blocks. So they make combat math.
Like pseudo vigilance all of a sudden. Yeah, okay.
So when I look at this card, like both Biting Palm, and even Moon Circuit, like I think you don't look at it like it's going to be doing any kind of like you said, pauper shenanigans where you have multiple copies and Ninja the Deep Hours or whatever. But like, just get back that gilded goose and draw your card, and now you have a body, or rip their hand apart. I agree with what you've said in that, we get access to every card in the game, every creature in the game, and some things are more cute than others. But I think you just play the card based on the text that's written on it, instead of having this big ninjutsu or bounce deck narrative. That's my very convoluted take on this common. Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about a mythic. Next up, we have Blade of the Oni. This is a 2-mana 3/1 artifact creature equipment demon for 1 and a black. It has menace. So for 1 and a black, you get a menace with 3/1. But it also has reconfigure, which is a mechanic I love. So for 2 black, equipped creature has base power and toughness 5/5, has menace, and is a black demon in addition to its other colors and types. I don't know how long people listening to this have been playing the format or how familiar they are with mono black archetypes, but 4 mana 5/5 demons in black just has a soft spot in my heart, and I wish I could remember the name of this. And this is an Alex Stacey classic. It's a land, you pay 2 black, sack all your lands to get a 5/5 demons.
You mean Tomb of Arami, the Saviors of Kamigawa All-Star?
Right?
Yeah.
This just has Tomb of Arami all over it. And I'll never be able to forget Alex is saying, beep, beep, just sack all his lands and go. And the beautiful thing about Blade of the Oni here is there's no downside. This demon doesn't do damage to you every turn. You don't lose life. It doesn't make you sacrifice anything. So you have a fantastic body already. Like 3/1 for 2 with menace is going to kill people. And then eventually, if they make the board big enough that your 3/1 can't shove damage through, you turn it into a 5/5. This card is excellent.
Serge, what if I told you there was a Tomb of Arami that was playable? And that's Blade of the Oni. It's just Blade. This card's it's busted. It's cracked. This
card's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Like yeah. Great, cool. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just staring at it and thinking about killing people with it. My God, God forbid you play this in a deck with like Ignoble Hierarch or Noble Hierarch, and you just get exalted triggers and you're smacking for 1,000,000, and then you put it on your mana dork. Wow. Onto something a little more reserved, calming, soothing. A giant mythic dragon. Junji, the Midnight Sky. 3 black for a 5/5 legendary dragon spirit. It has flying and menace, because you're never blocking this. And when it dies, you choose 1. Each opponent discards 2 cards and you lose 2 life. Or sorry, they lose 2 life. Again, like Blade of the Oni, this is a 20/20 black card. They lose the life, not you. So when it dies, each opponent discards 2 cards and loses 2 life, or put target non-dragon creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, and you lose 2. And that's from a graveyard. So this is 5 mana. Well,
I just want to play this with Recurring Nightmare, Wheeler.
Yeah, I just want to loop this card, or just kill people with this card, or it's really like, it's just so big and does so much.
This
Wow.
is right in that sweet spot of being both hard castable and happily reanimated.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Like, sorry. Again, all these.
Actually speechless. We've done it. We've finally made Wheeler speechless. He's just staring at these cards and
I've just been playing so much Canlander.
drooling.
Well, I mean, the drool's no different from any other day. But yeah, I've been playing so much Canlander and just building so many decks and now I'm like, oh, well, I didn't think about mono black, did I? Yeah, this honks like the good honk. This card's very strong. It's big, it's powerful, it'll kill your opponent. It costs 5, but it's a 5-mana mythic dragon. If they don't deal with it, they're dead.
Next up, we have The Life of Toshiro Umezawa. This is a 2-mana saga. Chapters 1 and 2, target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, or you gain 2 life. Any GT players out there perhaps familiar with those modes? And the final chapter, exile the saga, return it to the battlefield, transformed and under your control as the memory of Toshiro. This is an enchantment creature, human samurai. It's a 2/3, and tap 1 and pay 1 life to add a black. Spend this mana only to cast an instant or sorcery spell. And if I remember correctly, this was actually one of the workshop abilities for original GT that got cut.
Yeah, one of the original abilities was it added black mana.
They're like too powerful. Switch it out for something else.
Yeah, Jesus.
I don't have much interesting to say about this card, Wheeler.
So this card was the kind of card that I similarly didn't think would be that good for our format. I think that's mostly a product of people not properly evaluating sagas in our format, myself included. And then I had this card in limited and it was absolutely backbreaking against a bunch of 1 toughness creatures. And I thought, wow, there's a lot of mana dorks and Esper Sentinels and whatnots running around in Canlander. And then it popped up in some standard lists and modern lists. And it was just like, okay, I see it. The delay, like the staggering of this ability is huge because it not only does it muck whatever's on the board, but it also just prevents them from further developing, or it works with other effects that your deck is likely to have either in black or in other, black, red, black, green, whatever your other color is going to be. And then the flip side is just kind of, it's the gravy. You just get this 2/3. Honestly, I don't really care about that much. The fact that you get it on delay is kind of nice, but I think this card does enough with our format that it's worth taking a shot in black or black X midrange.
That's so interesting to me because I'm so worried about this card doing nothing.
Well,
Like, so worried about this card doing nothing. Like a 2/3 for 2 on turn 5.
well, the floor of this card is that it's a 2-mana 2/3 that adds mana and gains you 4 life.
But it's like a 2-mana 2/3 3 turns later, right?
Right, but I like to think of these cards like they're suspend.
Okay.
Except they do something when they're suspended and you remove the counters, and they also have synergies, the same synergies any enchantment or permanent has. So you can get and like blinking, like they get tricky. There's a lot more value attached to these creatures, these saga creatures, than meets the eye.
That's good to know. I'll try and not be so narrow-minded about them, I suppose. Yeah, it's a lot of words on a card, and I love your advice of if there's a certain threshold of how many words are on a card, you need to start thinking positively about it. All right, let's move on, though. Next up, we have March of Wretched Sorrow. X and a black gets you an instant and says, as an additional cost to cast the spell, you may exile any number of black cards from your hand. The spell costs 2 less to cast each way to do that. And then March of Wretched Sorrow deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, and you gain X life. I mean, black having a force of will to kill a planeswalker in a format where Oko is legal seems tremendously useful. Instant speed, flexible, damage to both a creature and a planeswalker, and incidental life gain. What's not to like?
It's basically expensive black removal spell number like 4012.
Yeah.
That's not even a number, but you get what I mean. This is the kind of card where it checks off all the boxes. I'm not going to play this card.
No, actually, it's funny we say that too. I probably won't either. I think there are more efficient ways to do it, but on paper, it meets enough criteria that I'll probably die to it.
Yeah, you will, if you are a deck that cares about your opponent gaining a bunch of life out of nowhere, and your opponent has this, you will be pissed. But at the same time, you probably won't run into it that much. Here's a card that will run into you, though, Serge. It will collide into you. It's a Mukotai Soul Ripper. 1 and a black for a 4/3 vehicle. It's an artifact. It has Crew 2. And whenever Mukutai Soul Ripper attacks, you may sacrifice another artifact or creature. If you do, put a 1/1 counter on it, and it gains menace until end of turn. Black has so many awful one-drop Carnophage-looking creatures that just crew this card immediately. That's great. That's so good. Like, wow. This card, like, it's kind of funny how well this card, like, just angles up with the cheap black threats.
Yeah.
The 1-drops, but also the 2-drops that are recursive. So you can, like, Bloodghast, crew it with this, then sack it to the Soul Ripper, and then just play a land and get the Bloodghast back and do it all again next turn.
You're literally saying word for word what my valuation of this card was going to be. It's wild, actually.
I only say that because I might have a copy of this card and a Bloodghast on my desk right now. Yeah. It's probably why I was pausing about the Blade of the Oni, because I was going over like, I need to get my copy of this card. God. Yeah. Big vehicle.
I'm very excited to play Soul Ripper. All right, next up, we have Nashi, Moon Sage's Scion. This is a 3-mana 3/2 legendary rat ninja for 1 black. Its ninjutsu cost is 3 and a black. And whenever Nashi Moon Sage's Scion deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of each player's library. Until end of turn, you may play one of those cards. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana cost rather than paying its mana cost. And this falls into the category of cards we like to call not Bob.
Yep.
Of how do you generate card advantage at the cost of your life, which is something that like cheap black aggressive decks have wanted to do for over a decade right now. And in the category of other cards that continue to be not Bob, Nashi is very notably not Bob. I don't know what more to say on that, really. It's pretty expensive. It's a legend, which is pretty clunky in our format. It's likely to get bounced back. You might be able to get somebody with the ninja ability, but as we sort of mentioned early, there is a cost associated with that. There's also some upside associated with that. So like, give it a try, have fun with it. I don't see myself playing this anytime soon.
Serge, I got one word for you, and maybe this will stop the people furiously commenting about how they have not Bob ideas with it. Shock.
Yeah.
Great.
It's a lot of mana and a card to return to your hand to get shocked. Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine spending 4 mana just to lose to red. Wow.
Well, and returning a card to your hand and returning an unblocked creature to your hand, right?
Yeah. Poor Nashi. Here's a rat ninja that is a little bit better against red. It's Nezumi Prowler. Wow. 1 and a black for a 3/1 artifact creature. It's a rat ninja. Has ninjutsu for 1 and a black. When it ETBs, target creature you control, which could include itself, gains Death Touch and Lifelink until end of turn. This is just kind of a neat little role player. I think black has a couple of cheap ninjas that are, well, just ones that you're playing because they have more power than cost associated with them. And it makes the classic mono black aggro attacking so much better because you're going to attack with that Bloodghast. Like, you'll play your land post combat anyways, and people will just chump. Just be like, okay, I'll block. I guess I'll block this because I don't want to block your 3 power thing or whatever.
You're like, haha, there was a second one.
Yep. It's like Blacklands Paragon kind of does a similar thing.
I was about to ask, like, this is not the first sneaky way to get a 3/1 into play and gain some life in black.
Mm-hmm.
And I should just let you finish. We're on the same page with so many of these valuations right now.
It's just kind of a nice little bread and butter card that is absolutely going to get people. And the 3 life is nothing to shake at.
Next up, Okiba Reckoner Raid. This is a 1-mana saga for single black. Chapters 1 and 2 say each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And on the 3rd turn, you flip it into the Nizami Road Captain, which is a 2/2 enchantment creature rat rogue with menace, and vehicles you control have menace. Once again, we have a saga with a lot of words on it. It's a little slower, but for the amount of investment you are putting into this card, which is a slot in your deck and a single black mana, you actually get a fair amount out of this.
Yeah.
I kind of like it both in a deck with vehicles and possibly, I don't know how many vehicles you're playing in your Soul Sisters deck, but like that's a pretty reasonable incidental life gain early on there.
This flips a lot quicker than you'd think. Like, it is, again, looking at it like with a suspend kind of comparison. is you just pay 1, you drain them for 2, which is kind of annoying.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
yeah.
all of a sudden, boom, a 2/2 with Menace that might have additional synergies for other cards you're going to play in your deck. Like your Smuggler's Copter.
I just love the way you phrase it. It's like 2 life drain. You're right. The perfect word to describe that is annoying.
Yeah, I've played a lot of this card.
Yeah, I bet. If you play this format in limited, you're just like, yeah, okay, it's back.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I think it likely mostly sticking around for decks that will want to play, 1 mana black creatures with 2 power. But yeah, annoying. Really annoying. Speaking of annoying, Soul Transfer. And I only say it's annoying because I feel like we get new versions of these cards every single set. And I feel like the spiel is going to be the same. It's 1 black for a sorcery. You choose one of the following effects. But if you control an artifact and an enchantment as you cast it, you can choose both. Exile target creature or planeswalker, or return target creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. This has so many words on it. I like all of these words. I've played a worse version of this card that it just says, 3 mana, destroy a creature or planeswalker at sorcery speed. But in a mono black control deck or a black X control deck, like The Rock, I'll get value out of all this. But what do I cut?
Yeah.
What does this, is this going to provide that kind of value that a planeswalker won't, or that Sylvan Library doesn't cover? It's cards like this that make me really wish that we could just play 200 card minimum and throw all the, logistics out the window, but just, give a home to something like Soul Transfer.
Final black card we're going to be talking about today is Tatsunari Toad Rider. This is a 3 mana 3/3 legendary human ninja. Kind of disappointed that Toad isn't included in there, but here we are. For 2 and a black. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, if you don't control a creature named Kame, create Kame, a legendary 3/3 black and green frog creature token. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. And then 1 and a green-blue hybrid, Tatsunari, and target frog you control can't be blocked this turn except by creatures with flying or reach. I mean, I don't think it's going to come as a surprise to anybody that I really like this card. One of the issues I traditionally run into in an Enchantress deck is, okay, how do I win? Enchantress is the sort of deck that the first thing that goes into your mind is, how do I not die? And then you try. It's a very backwards way of playing Magic. It's like, okay, I need to protect myself and lock my opponent out of the game, and then slowly transitioned over to it. And this gives you a rather elegant looking win condition. And early, it also helps with your Operation How Do I Not Die as the Enchantress deck, because this blocks and it actually creates a repeatable blocker or attacker in the frog, because every time you cast an enchantment, it replaces itself, which is very elegant. I don't really care too much about the activated ability, because I think if you're an Enchantress deck or even an enchantment-based deck, well, now that I say that, maybe this does slide pretty well into one of these Sanctum Stompy decks as well, where you're trying to get there with creatures. There are some powerful black enchantments that were just barely making the cut, and I think Tatsunari now moves the color pie for good black enchantments.
This is a card that's going to have a renaissance in 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
People are going to figure out the deck to play this that uses cards that are already out, but it'll just wind up a configuration where everyone's playing Abundant Growth. And it's right now, maybe a Sylvan Library gets it. A cheeky Okiba Reckoner Raid.
I think Abzan Enchantress or Abzan Sanctum Stompy is in the wheelhouse of ways that are going to kill your opponent pretty fast. Because if you're that Sanctum Stompy deck, the incidental chip damage of every time you bestow also drain is going to add up very fast.
I think you're onto something. I have visions of casting Animate Deads on my Solitude and making a frog.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I don't think your enchantment density even needs to be that high for this to be extremely annoying.
No. I mean, think about it. Even if you're only playing, as you said, 10 or 15 enchantments, a 3 mana, 6 power pardon?
Yeah.
Is Gitrog a frog or a toad?
Yes.
They're all frogs, right?
It's all frogs all the way down.
I mean, hello? suddenly making it basically unblockable.
You want
So
to play
you're
Frog Enchantress?
I look, it would be my worst idea,
Ooh,
Wheeler.
there we go. Oh, I got it. A Pattern Rector Enchantress deck. We call it Princess and the Frog. I don't know. I don't have anything else to add on to that, but that, I mean,
We got the name. We got the name, and that's as good a starting point as I
all of
need.
my decks start at the name. Here's a name that we could start at when we go into the red cards. It's Atsushi, the Blazing Sky. What a transition. 2 red for a 4/4 legendary dragon spirit that has flying and trample. When Atsushi dies, choose one. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. Or make 3 treasure tokens. I mean, yeah, it's a big dragon.
God, I want this to have haste, though.
Yeah.
I would trade either of those keywords for haste.
A lot of the 4-drop dragons don't get haste, though. And I think I'm okay with it because it makes the 5-drop dragon that I absolutely will have all that just so much scarier.
That's fair. Because then they have to deal with both swinging.
Yeah. Just like, boom, here's a dragon, untap Glorybringer. And like, if they kill this card or if it trades with stuff in combat, maybe you tapped out to play another one of those dragons, use those treasure tokens to throw a bunch of lightning bolts at their face or restock. I just think this is another mythic rare with a whole bunch of good abilities and evasion and will probably kill people dead.
Oh, yeah. We've set it up so that I have another Wheeler card here, so I'll read it and I'll throw it to you. We've got the Experimental Synthesizer. This is a single red pip for an artifact. When it enters or leaves the battlefield, exile the top card of your library until end of turn, you may play that card. And 2 in a red, sack it to create a 2/2 white samurai creature token with vigilance, activate only as a sorcery. I'm imagining you've got something degenerate that you're going to loop with this, right?
Honestly, no.
Oh.
Yeah. But I mean, it's kind of degenerate. Like it involves like Dragon's Rage Channeler and like, you know, Tarmogoyf and stuff.
I would have figured this is just like, is this not an egg? It's not quite a card draw, but it's a card draw.
I mean, it absolutely is an egg in both the, you know, the visuals and what it's going to do. The problem is it costs a red mana. So it's really difficult to loop with this without having an additional like Lotus or Lotus Petal, anything like that. The exile could be a little awkward, especially if there's some disruption in play. And like, we just don't need this for eggs, but I like it because it adds Delirium for my Unholy Heat. I like it in a rug. I don't know. It's weird to call it a lands mid-range deck. I want to play with like Uro, Laelia, you know, just real sicko cards. Dragon's Rage Channeler.
It's so weird to me that you name some of the most powerful busted cards in Magic, and you're like, yeah, let me get this Experimental Synthesizer in there with it. I'm like, hold on, timeout. What?
Well,
what?
It draws 2 cards. It's the reason I want to play it in that is because it's a non-creature card for a single mana that draws 2 cards effectively, puts a permanent on the board. How you get that second card can be manipulated by either you deciding to use your turn to make a samurai to get a creature down, or by if you have something where you sack permanents or you blow up permanents, you know, it just draws cards. I think there's a lot of that in this set. There's a lot of distractions. Don't pay attention to the katana that's in the egg. Pay attention to the card that's now going to get played.
All right. Now, since we're talking about eggs really quickly, there was a comment on the last video, and I have to know.
Okay.
What is a nut, and what's the difference between an egg and a nut nowadays? Like,
great. I'll run this down very quickly.
All right.
So eggs are 1 mana artifacts that will put a card into your hand, typically drawing, but it could also be tutoring or returning, stuff like that. And then there are 2 mana artifacts that also do this. However, they're not eggs, and a lot of them just draw on ETB. And we have to go back to when this was a theme in Magic. So in 5th Dawn with Auriok Salvagers. And there was a pre-con called Nuts and Bolts that was built around Trinket Mage and Auriok Salvagers. And so you have eggs at 1, and then we have nuts and bolts. And bolts are always for 3 unless they're for 2. So a bolt is 3, egg is 1, so it's got to be a nut.
Fascinating. I had no idea, and I thought I just didn't know at the time when we recorded, so I was like, whatever, we'll move on with it. But then I saw it in the comments, and I thought to myself, this is an opportunity.
You can thank Cameron for canonizing this during the PPR. So, yeah.
Oh, all right. I had no idea. All right. Well, next up, we have The Fable of the Mirror Breaker. This is a 3-mana saga for 2 and a red. Chapter 1. Create a 2/2 red goblin shaman creature token with whenever this creature attacks, create a treasure token. The second chapter is you may discard up to 2 cards. If you do, draw that many cards. And then the third chapter transforms it into the reflection of Kiki Jiki. This is an enchantment creature, Goblin Shaman 2/2. And then 1 and tap. Create a token that's a copy of another target non-legendary creature you control, except it has haste, and sack that token at the beginning of the next end step. Notably, this one has been templated that's a little bit harder to go infinite because of that 1 cost. This is neat. This is powerful.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm going to play it anywhere, but man, does it ever do a lot for 3 mana. So probably, I don't know. It has ancient 2 mana. So is this a shoe-in for medium red?
Yes. I plan on playing this in medium red. I plan on playing this in like a Gruul Monsters deck.
Yep.
This is again, classic Saga case. It's deceptively powerful.
Like, I mean, it doesn't even look deceptively powerful. It just looks powerful.
Well, it looks powerful, but every time you look at it and go like, I mean, it's just a 2/2 goblin. Like, you could just kill it. Or like, you got to pay a mana. And you could just kill the flip side too. You know, I guess, what if you don't want to discard the cards or whatever? It's the fact that it's all in one card.
Yeah, it's a lot of value.
It's just a lot of value. It's like Huntmaster value, you know? It just does so much.
One important thing to note, the reflection of Kiki Jiki does not have haste. And the way these sagas are templated is the permanent is exiled and then comes back in. So even the turn it flips, it can't activate its ability. So that might get people, especially if they're familiar with Kiki Jiki or with some of the transforming werewolves or something like that right now. So that is a strike against it. But again, it does so much.
Yeah, if you untap with it, you win the game.
Yeah.
Just not by the standard Kiki Resto stuff.
Yeah.
Although Resto Angel with this is still pretty good. On to other good goblins. How about a Goro Goro, Disciple of Ryusei? It's 1 in a red for a 2/2 legendary goblin samurai. You can pay a red, creatures you control gain haste until end of turn, and 3 red, create a 5/5 red dragon spirit creature token with flying, activated only if you control an attacking modified creature. Of course, attacking is equipment, or as you control, and counters are modifications. This is just a 2-drop goblin that gives goblins haste and takes a bit of mana, but that's okay. I don't know, it makes a dragon like it's a goblin. Have you seen how bad the cards goblins? I mean, goblins plays good, like the card quality has gone up. I will say that. And I think that this card is of high enough quality that you will play it in a goblins deck, but you're mostly playing this because it's a goblin that costs 2, has 2 power, can give things haste, and has its cost reduced by Goblin War Chief. And God bless you if you get a dragon.
I wonder if this is good enough to cut like Mog Fanatic finally.
How could you say that? How could you say that?
I take it back. I apologize.
Oh, at least go for Goblin Arsonist first.
All right. Next up, Kumano faces Kakazan. I apologize for my pronunciation there, by the way. This is a single red saga. Chapter 1, deal 1 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker they control. Chapter 2, when you cast your next creature spell this turn, that creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. And then the third chapter, it transforms into a 2/2 with haste. And if a creature that dealt damage this turn by a source you controlled would die, exile it instead. I think this one's a little bit easier to evaluate. I think this lines up very well with what red aggressive decks want to do, which is deal damage turn 1, the turn it comes down, make your creature that you play on turn 2 bigger, and then turn 3, the fact that this has haste and gives you sort of incidental haste against Kitchen Finks or other creatures that you would love to get rid of that might recur and come back. This is pretty cool and good.
Pretty strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good.
It's a lot of text for 1 mana.
Yeah, a lot. Would you like to? I feel like you should take this next card. This feels like a you card.
What a treat. All right, let's talk about Lizard Blades. This is a 2-mana 1/1 artifact creature equipment lizard. What a sentence for 1 in red. It has double strike, and it has reconfigure for 2 with equipped creature has double strike. Now, There has always been a not so secret archetype in the enchantment decks, which is the Double Strike Matters enchantment decks, and we have played some terrible cards in the history of trying to double strike with GT. That's the whole goal. Is I want to play an overcosted like 3 mana 1/1 double strike creature or a 2
Yeah.
mana 1/1 double strike creature just to try and live the dream of first strike damage with GT pumping, and then your double strike gets in. You get to hit them for just a little bit more. And Lizard Blades is great because it cuts one of those really bad creatures you were playing previously, or equips to one of your other good creatures and just makes that dream so much sweeter. This card literally slices and dices. It's blades. I don't have enough good stuff to say about it.
Yeah, the fact that that deck played Warren Instigator just as a 2 mana 1/1 double striker. Wow, we were desperate. This card, yeah, it smacks. Very good. Here's a card that's a little more deceptive, though. March of Reckless Joy. So it's X and a red. It's an instant. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you can exile the red cards, cost 2 less for each card exiled. And then you exile the top X cards of your library. You can play up to 2 of those cards until the end of your next turn. I'm pretty down to clown with this card. I think that this card is going to provide a nice little either EOT value for like a blue-red deck or just, I mean, I guess other red decks, black-red, to just get a bunch of cards. You could either dump your mana in or just play it for like 2 and just get more selection so that you can multi-spell. Cards are getting so efficient in these decks that like you can do this reliably to either set up to get some lands to then further multi-spell with the cards in your hand, or get cheaper stuff so that you can then, well, just chain a bunch of bolts or shocks. And then there's a whole thing about playing red where like there's like kind of a joke where like Lava Spike is such a value card because it's like a 5-for-1 where you kill them with the Lava Spike and they had 5 cards left in their hand. And so I think there are plenty of situations where red decks will just have cards in their hand and like all they need to do is kill you this turn.
Right.
And these cards in their hand are not necessarily the ones that will let them do that. So if I have to pay 1 and then get rid of like 3 cards just to go so deep, I'll do it because it means I'm going to win the game.
Yeah.
Or it means I'm going to deal with this stupid Thrag Tusk or whatever, roadblocks in the way.
I almost don't mind this in like Mardu stacks as a way to dig for answers as well.
Mm-hmm.
There are red archetypes that generate a tremendous amount of mana and have nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Well, we literally talked about a card from Crimson Vow, Reckless Impulse, that is basically one in a red sorcery. Exile the top 2 cards of your deck until the end of your next turn. You can play those cards. And so this is, obviously if you pay 1 in a red, you're only going to get 1 card. So it's not a direct 1-to-1, but in the decks that would have wanted, say, that card, you might get more out of that effect with this card and more flexibility for when you do it.
All right, next up we have the Rabbit Battery, which has great art, and I'm not sure if it's a pun or not, but it has a flaming rabbit, so that's it's a win in my book. This is a 1 mana 1/1 artifact creature equipment rabbit. It has haste, it has reconfigure for a single red, and equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has haste. And I don't know if it's good or not, but I know I'm going to play it. It is probably the most honest way that I can describe a card like this. And I like it in obviously a red-white equipment deck. The ability to give a creature haste is really interesting, and I'm thinking of it more for the ability for an artifact deck to actually rebuild after getting wrathed, because you don't want to overextend too much, especially with a Voltron deck. You can get away with having 1 threat and sort of suiting it up with everything, and the fact that reconfigure gives you a body afterwards is already a huge upside, which makes this card better than a lot of, your bone splitters or other things that, don't also get to attack.
I like it. It's a great Raging Goblin.
Yeah, that's the part I worry about is like, I don't know if the equipment deck needs a Raging Goblin, but it's so close.
It's just, the value of having like, what if your Lightning Greaves could punch your opponent in the jaw?
Yeah.
That's pretty appealing.
Yeah. The fact that you could top deck this after getting wrathed and then give it your other equipment to swing for lethal, or it's on board and you can play your next threat afterwards and then give it haste.
Yeah. Just top deck this and equip the Nettle Cyst and kill them. Mm.
I could also see this being card 101 and cutting it, though. I don't know. It's going to be really tough to evaluate its actual impact.
Yeah, these cards, they take a lot. There's a lot going on with them. There's a lot of unique scenarios. So let's get something a little more caveman. Reinforced Ronin. Wow. 1 red for a 2/2 haste. It's an artifact creature and a human samurai. At the beginning of your end step, you return Reinforced Ronin to your hand, or to its owner's hand at least, and has Channel. Pay 1 in a red, discard Reinforced Ronin, and draw a card. So it's a 1 mana 2/2 haste creature that is going to bounce itself back so it can dodge, the sorcery speed removal or whatever it may be. And it just smacks for 2. It smacks for 2. You get the, any triggers from having things ETB. It's an artifact, so it adds to your Delirium cards, your Dragon's Rage Channeler, Unholy Heat. And if you find yourself in a position where you're like, this card's not doing what I want it to do anymore, you could just pitch it. I think it's pretty good. Kills people dead.
Next up, we have the Sokenzan Smelter. Once again, apologies. I had joked about, what if we just had Beej in our corner, and every time we had to pronounce a Japanese word, he would just nail it and then cut back to us. But
oh, I mean, you got me, buddy.
All right.
Sokenzan Smelter.
Beautiful. This is a 2 mana 2/2 Goblin Artificer for 1 and a red. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 1 and sack an artifact. If you do, create a 3/1 red construct artifact creature token with haste. I like this card a lot. I like this card a lot, because there are so many artifacts that are just begging to have a way to get sacrificed. And the fact that the creature that is made after the artifact dies is also an artifact and it has haste. This is great. I want to put this in so many decks, Wheeler.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a cute name for it because I want to compare it. I mean, this is a really brash comparison, but it does feel kind of like a Goblin Rabblemaster Legion Warboss style card.
Yeah, I can see that as well.
You don't lose the token.
Yeah, you don't even sack it at end of turn, right? It's like, what if Ball Lightning with no sack at end of turn? No, this can get out of hand very, very quickly. And the beautiful thing about artifacts, as opposed to something like your Legion Warboss or whatever, is this could also ramp you in the right deck. Like your engine to kill them might also accelerate you. So the snowball potential, like the upside potential on this card, is outrageous.
Yeah, it gets out of hand very quickly. Yikes. This is the real terror of the artifact decks. No Oni Called Anvil for me, thank you.
Yeah, this little 2 mana 2/2 uncommon is the sleeper threat.
Serge, how do you feel about Hellrider?
I'm a big fan of the old beat. Yeah, I've killed a couple people. I've probably died to it more than I've killed with it, to be honest.
What if I told you could have another one that wasn't Hero of Oxid Ridge?
Oh, poor hero. All right, you have my attention. Tell me about it.
Well, this is Thundering Raiju. It's 2 red for a 3/3 haste. No flying. Please, for the love of God, this card does not have flying.
It looks like it should, though. It really does.
It does. And you could probably lie to your opponent and say it does, and they'll believe you. It doesn't really matter. They're likely dead before they even get hit. Don't lie to your opponent. That was a joke. But what isn't a joke is the amount of damage this does, because when Thundering Raiju attacks, you put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, and then Raiju deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of modified creatures you control other than Thundering Raiju. So right out the gates, it's not going to do a complete Hellrider impression, but in a red-green monsters deck, or even a Naya deck, a Boros, Jund, God forbid somebody brings out Jund, they pull the juice out of retirement, and Drag Mangler starts mangling people's dregs all over again. Yeah, this is some scary redundancy.
Yeah.
Now these decks have always had this top end of haste creature that pushes through damage. And between this Hellrider and Questing Beast,
oh my God.
Oh my God. Jesus, leave me alone. I'm trying to play Magic here.
There's almost a threat density where every creature in that deck could have haste now, which is a terrifying thought.
Yeah.
And not even janky haste, actual legitimate finisher haste.
Mm-hmm. And the floor of this is it's a Raging Ravine, right?
Yeah.
It just gets bigger every turn. That's pretty good. And that's the worst case scenario.
Final red card we're going to talk about today is Voltage Me. Voltage Surge is a instant for a single red mana. As an additional cost to cast the spell, you may sack an artifact. deal 2 damage to target creature or player, or if the additional cost was paid, deal 4 damage instead. I've never been a huge fan of shrapnel blasts. I don't like the extra hurdle you have to jump through. So shrapnel blast is a classic 2-mana burn spell for 1 in the red. You have to sack an artifact and deal 5 damage to any target. So what Voltage Surge does is its floor is it's a shock that doesn't go to the dome. And it's a little bit more flexible if you want to go up and you do want to sack that permanent for 4 instead. So costs against this card, it doesn't go to the dome, which is a very big deal. Pros to this card is the significance of 4 damage to a creature. And we've played a lot of cards in this format that don't go to the dome, but they do a lot of damage to a creature. So I don't know. At the end of the day, I'm not super stoked about Voltage Surge. I can see maybe wanting to play it. We've talked about how free it is often to want to sack artifacts to get extra damage through in certain decks. And, with what did we talk about? The 23 artifact lands that were floating around the other day. It's never been easier to include them for free.
Can I say something controversial?
Go for it.
Specifically, you might take offense to this.
Oh, please.
I like this better than Dispatch.
You like this better than Dispatch?
Yes. Dispatch, for those at home or people that haven't played Surge and Canadian Highlander.
Am I the only person who plays Dispatch? That can't be right.
I may have played it out of respect when I brought the Affinity deck to Friday Night Paper.
All right. Yeah, what's Dispatch?
It's a 1-white instant. It says tap target creature, and then Metalcraft, exile that creature. And it's appealing to have the potential of a 1-mana Swords to Plowshares that, quite often will just be that. The thing is, when it isn't that, it's just completely unplayable. And often the scenarios where Dispatch isn't Swords to Plowshares, that's when you need the Swords to Plowshares so you can survive. But Voltage Surge hits Planeswalkers will always have the 2 damage to kill that Collector Roof or that Brutal Cathar or Skyclave Apparition. And then can always just go up to 4 to get rid of the Brimhez, and maybe you sack that Samurai Egg to get the extra value, or you get Delirium going because you put an Arcbound Worker in the graveyard and also move those counters over. I like this card. And again, I think this is one that is probably, I want it to age well because I think we're going to see more and more decks playing like oops incidental artifacts. But that said, we're probably going to get things that outclass it by the time we hit critical oops incidental artifacts. But I like this card. I like it quite a bit.
Maybe my rose-tinted glasses on Dispatch. Oh God, please don't tell me Dispatch is going to be the next Hovermere where you're like, Surge, please. It's 2022. It's time to let go.
Sir, yeah, I got some bad. Prismatic Ending already kind of just showed up and was like, hey, you play Moxen, right?
Oh.
What are you using that Tree of Tales for? It's okay to let go, dude. You can play it in a mono white deck. How about that?
My mono white Affinity deck. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I feel like a dad saying like, we can't have McDonald's, but hey, we got craft dinner at home. How about that?
All right, let's move to the artifacts. Maybe I'll find joy there.
Yeah, how about this? Containment Construct. 2 mana for a 2/1 artifact creature. It's a construct. Whenever you discard a card, you may exile that card from your graveyard. If you do, you may play that card this turn. Oh boy. Okay. As one of the 3 people that knew what Artificer's Intuition was before this card came out, for those of you that don't know, pretend Survival of the Fittest was blue, and instead of creatures, you discarded artifacts to get eggs. Capiche? As one of the few people that knew that existed before this card came out, and that knows the loops that you can do with that card, and this, and Lion's Eye Diamond, you can get wacky. This card can combo, is what I'm saying.
LED. I didn't even think about this with LED.
Yeah.
My little baby brain was just like, looter, scooter, clap.
Well, that's the thing. Maybe that's just fine, right? Like Bomat Courier or Looter Scooter with this, that's
right?
not the worst. But my gigantic, I've wasted my life brain is screaming about Lion's Eye Diamond. And the worst part is I don't even think I need it, I'm sure there's likely a deck out there where this card is popping off and doing something. I don't think it's eggs proper. I think you're a dedicated artifact deck that is maybe using Bomberman stuff and welders. But this card, look, if you own a Lion's Eye Diamond, you're going to want this. You already know you want this. If not, don't worry about it.
I just want to try it in workshop decks. Like the density of creatures that are playable that you can cast off of just a workshop in your starting
Mhm.
hand, not great. I mean, that's why I played Hovermere for so long, right? Just for that all-in potential. And there's enough incidental discard, like we talked about Looter Scooter and Bomac Carrier, and I'm sure some other ones show up that I might even try this not in combo.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you'll get value from it. And even if it's just like one or two cards, like often that's enough to justify it.
I mean, we play terrible cards that cantrip, right? Like,
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about a very easy win. We got Eater of Virtue. 1 mana legendary artifact equipment. Whenever a equipped creature dies, exile it. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and equips for 1. And then it also says, as long as the card exiled with Eater of Virtue has flying, equipped creature has flying. The same is true for first strike, double strike, death touch, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, protection, reach, trample, and vigilance. Yeah, this is Bone Splitter 2. It does have some interesting applications though of there are a lot of decks that have built-in redundancy that also like Bone Splitter. So for example, Alex's classic Black Mold, which is a green black deck that would love another Bone Splitter, but probably doesn't love the fact that the creatures that die get exiled because that deck has a lot of built-in redundancy to it. And the redundancy from that is the fact that its threats are going to keep coming back. So I don't think this card is an auto include, but if you're an aggressive deck and you don't care about getting your permanents back, and in fact you'd like your Bone Splitter to just grow and get stronger the more of your creatures die, play this card. That's I think that's a pretty easy win on that one.
The nice thing about this card is that the creatures getting exiled is a triggered ability. It's not a replacement effect. So if you're playing this in your workshop weenie deck, you still get all of the, like modular triggers, or just for instance, triggers off of like the card Iron Apprentice, 1 mana, 0/0 artifact creature. It's a construct. ETBs with a 1/1 counter. When it dies, if it had counters on it, you can put those counters on target creature you control.
What a segue.
That was, yeah, my neighbors are clapping for me. So like I feel like that, I mean, this is just the coolest little Arcbound worker you've ever met. It is honestly my favorite. It's just a little cutie patootie and is better. Although if -1/-1 counters were put on it, it is not a May, which is kind of hilarious. That's okay. I don't think anyone's cast a Black Sun Zenith in the past decade.
Oh man, I miss Black Sun, but fair.
Yeah, God, what an era, huh? But yeah, like if you play this kind of card, which you will, with Eater of Virtue, which you are likely going to play them in the same deck, you still get all the goodies, at least, the important ones up front. So both pretty good role players and good redundancy options.
All right. We have to talk about this card. I think the comment sections would ride if we didn't talk about this card. It's the Mech Titan Core. This is a 2 mana vehicle. The vehicle has a 2/4. It crews for 2. So you're like, all right, sure, whatever. But this activated ability, 5 mana, exile the core and 4 other artifact creatures and or vehicles that you control and create Mech Titan, a legendary 10/10 construct artifact creature token with flying, vigilance, trample, lifelink, and haste. That's all colors. And when that token leaves the battlefield, return all cards exiled with Mech Titan Core, except for the core, to the battlefield tapped under their owner's control. Is this good? I don't know. Is it cool as hell? Oh, absolutely. And I know I have to try and make this happen on stream. I feel like I'm legally obligated to make this try and happen on stream. I think the only thing that makes this absolutely worth trying is the fact that if you put it together and you get blown out, you at least get the pieces back.
Yeah.
If you lost everything, I would say this is absolutely unplayable, but I'm going to try.
See, it's interesting. The thing that I don't think it's that ridiculous. It's definitely win more.
Yeah, it's doable, which is the worst part, right?
Yeah.
If it was so many hoops that it was just a hoop dream, I'd be like, okay, I could put this down and not have to talk about it. But it's so achievable, Wheeler.
It's definitely goofy. It feels a little unnecessary, bit of a win more. But at the same time, it does something that the decks that could play this and will play it ultimately don't have. Like there's not a really good replacement for this kind of thing. And what I'm looking at is, oh, well, these cards aren't coming back because I'm just sacking like servo tokens or Thopter tokens.
Yeah.
Or just a combination of those and, Winguses and Dinguses. Like, I don't think this is that difficult to get going. I think the biggest issue is that your Voltron might just collapse because an opponent casts Swords to Plowshares or whatever. And you're just like, oh.
Or Caracas or whatever, right? Yeah.
And it's just like, well, I guess that happened. But when it doesn't happen, whoo, damn, that's hard. Yeah. So live your best life, Serge. I believe in you.
Thank you.
I was going to try to get a good segue. I don't have one. This card is messed up. It's Patchwork Automaton. 2 mana for a 1/1 artifact creature, and it's a construct. It has Ward 2. Why? Why?
Right?
Like, let me get to the part that makes that scary. Because whenever you cast an artifact spell, put a 1/1 counter on Patchwork Automaton. So, Moxen, Lotus Petal, Urza's Bauble, Mishra's Bauble, any creature, equipment, artifacts, cheap, reliable things that often chain into more things. And then this just Ancient Tomb mana, Serge. You can't see it, but I'm waving my hands frantically with Ancient Tomb mana. And it's got Ward 2. This comes down ahead of the curve in a deck that could take advantage of that, and then has the insurance that even if you were playing fair with your mana, your opponent still has to wait. And it gets so big.
Yeah, it gets out of easy removal range on the turns, the only turns that they have an opportunity to actually kill it, right?
Yeah, God. And the Ward 2 is enough of a thing that when a lot of artifact removal, right, is getting shifted over to creature-based stuff or more flexible pieces of removal that can hit all kind of types. Again, Prismatic Ending, Kasali Pride Mages, Knight of Autumns, that kind of stuff. And so, you're never Rec-Saging this. That's 5 mana.
God, if you have to Green Sun Rec-Sage for this, you can't. 6 mana to kill a 2-drop? What turn? What universe are you living in?
I am so excited for the first time someone cast Finale of Devastation for a Knight of Autumn. So that's 5 mana. They target this. That's an additional 7 mana to blow it up so they don't die. And brother, I got a welding jar. or a Whir of Invention for a welding jar. Or just anything. Just oh, sorry. Kind of had this.
Wheeler, I don't know if my first deck is going to be Bant, Enchantress, or just artifacts. I'm so conflicted. I love so many of the cards that are coming out right now.
There's not enough events or time or anything. I'm tilted at how I can't get through these cards quick enough.
Yeah.
Oh my God. There's so much to choose from. This set's phenomenal.
Yeah. And we're only at part 2 of our set review. So that's going to be it for today, friends.
Yeah, geez, we haven't even talked about the lands.
I know! The land cycle! Are you right? Oh my God. All right. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a great time. I hope this was insightful. Or if you think it wasn't and we missed a bunch of cards, let us know in the comments below. We'll be back with part 3 next week, where we'll be covering green cards, gold cards, and land cards. A reminder that this podcast is brought to you by you with your support over the Patreon, patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.